All right, we start off with wishing everyone a good Chodesh on this very special Rosh Chodesh. Chodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chodashim. Shalach Kodesh says that every day of this month is considered like a Rosh Chodesh. HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chodashim. Every day is like a Rosh Chodesh. It's a wonderful time of the year. Wow, that's a borrowed phrase. But
it is true.
huh?
It is true.
Yeah.
It's true.
But anyway, we're sponsored by A.B. Spry for Nachas from his whole family, by Michal Avram Chavin, that everything should go good, and that everybody should finish Shas with Gesund. We want to welcome in Mo Kushner and Aaron Swade and Marshall Castle, Yitzi Muller, Irving Fishbaum, Dr. Guy, Eddie Chazan, Baruchian, Saba, Shalom Fogel, Ruvain Pollack, and Ruvain has asked us to please learn. It's his mother's Yahrzeit. Ita Beila Bas Moshe, her neshama should have an aliyah. She should be a Mlitzas Yosher for her family, for all of us, and all of Klal Yisrael. Nachman is joining us. Mark Frankel there's an eclipse by Mark Frankel. We can't see him, but right now you're eclipsed. We can't see your face. Mel Zachter, Shimon Klein, Stephen Holtzman, Yitzi Fuchs, Yeshua Shmuel Eisenberg, Moshe Lehman, Naftali Javelin, Shimon Deer, Ilya Shutman, Yitzi Padower. It's nice to have you. Here in Shul, we have Gedalia Engel, Reb Kramer, we have Reb Avram and Michal Avram and Ruvain Shanet, David Helfgott on Kol HaLoshen. So we are holding, if you remember, we had an incident with Mori Bar Asik, whose father Asik went overseas, married another woman, and had a son over there by the name of Marshall. And Murray came back. Murray possessed all the properties. And then Marshall shows up and says, look, I'm a brother, and I'm your paternal brother. I want half of the estate. So Murray said, you want half of the estate? Bring witnesses. I don't recognize you. So they went to Rav Chisda, and Rav Chisda said, he's right. You left without a bid. You have a bid. He doesn't recognize you. So Marshall said, Murray is a strong guy, an Adam Olam, and my witnesses won't testify against him. They're afraid, concrete boots and everything like that. So Rav Chisda said, okay, then Murray, you swear that he's not your brother. So Murray said, Dina Hachi, is that the rule? He wants to take it away from me. So he says, yeah, that's the rule for all mafioso like you. At the end, witnesses came and testified that Marshall was a brother. So now Marshall says, good evening, Richard. Now Marshall says, I don't just want half of the land, but I also want the improvement that Murray made in the land. I want half of the orchards. I want half of the gardens. So that's where we're up to now, as we start 4 lines from the bottom of Lamed Tes Amud Beis. And we welcome in Dr. Block, and we welcome in Richard Rosenzweig, as our numbers are, Baruch Hashem, swelling. Remember, Rabbi Isai, tomorrow night, we are an hour later, because Mirz Hashem, I'm going to be broadcasting from Chicago, from Marshall's house. It will be a rated share. We'll be broadcasting. It's going to be Marshall rated broadcasting, so it'll be 8 o'clock Chicago time, Central time, 9 o'clock our time. So share tomorrow will be at 9 o'clock. Is somebody going to set it up over here for the item?
Yeah, I could come and set it up. Set up like last time.
So you will,
Gadali, if you want to set up, you can set it up for them.
so if you will, I'll come here, I'll come.
Okay, you'll come?
Online.
Do you have a computer?
I do, but it's not, very slow.
Okay, so I'll bring down the computer. I'll bring down the computer. Okay, so 4 lines from the bottom of Lamates Amid base. So Amalei, so the other brother, Marshall, Murray's brother, said, Lifligli Nami, give me also half, mipardese, from the orchards of Bustane and from the gardens, the shassel that you planted. Amalei, so Rav Chisda said, Shaper Kamalach. He's telling you good. The Tanan, Honiach Banim Gedailim Ukatanim, if a father left older and younger children, Vishbichu Gedailim Esanis Chasim, and the adults improved the property, Hishbichu Leemsa, so they improved it for everybody. So here, when you improved it, Murray, you improved it for everyone. Rabba, Hishbichu Leemsa. Amalei Abaye, so Abaye says, me dummy. Hasam Gedolim Gabe Ketanim Yode. Over there, the adults, they knew about the existence of the younger children, and therefore they become machlik, and they therefore waived their rights. They said that they understood that it's going to be shared by the Ketanim. But over here, Murray truthfully didn't even know that Marshall existed. Stand in line. Mi yade delechel, did he know that he should waive his rights? So this question rolled about, igalgal milsa, umata lekami de Rabami, and it reached the great Rabami. Amalahu, so he said, Gedailim Mizu, greater than this case. Amru shaman lahem ka'aris. We say that if a person goes into the property of a captive, right, so we evaluate him as an aris, and we give him a share in the profits. So here, hashta day, here, where he thought it was his own land, lo yavina lei, shouldn't we at least give him a share as a sharecropper in the part of Marshall's land that he improved? He shouldn't get half of the land. He should give him at least share as a sharecropper. They returned this to Rav Chisda. Amalu mi dami. Hasam b'rishus nachas. There, when he's going into the land of the next of when the next of kin goes into the land of a captive, he went in with permission. Here, there was no permission from Bezdin. Bezdin didn't give him permission to go into the land. And not only that, since at the time when he went into the land, Marshall, his brother, was a minor. V'oid katanhu. They maridin karv'nich cotton, and a relative is not allowed to go into the property of a cotton, and therefore, really, Murray had no right to go into Marshall's part of the property at all. Adrula coming to Rabami, they went and they returned this to Rabami. So he said, I didn't know all the details. They didn't give me all the details. They didn't tell me the cotton, and therefore he shouldn't be paid anything from the shvach, from the improvement that he made on Marshall's part. Marshall gets half and half of the improvement. Now, we're going to go back to the discussion of the normal rate of deterioration. So, Amafkid Paris, if I deposit Paris by Mark, and Mark is going to return me the Paris that I deposited, Harizeh yoitzi lo chesroinus. He could deduct the normal rate of deterioration. What's the normal rate of deterioration? So, lechitim u'la'oris, for wheat and rice, tisha chatzoi kavim l'kur. 9.5 kav to a kur. Now, a kur is 30 sa, and in a sa is 6 kav. So, a kur is 180 kav, right? So 9.5 kavim, 9.5 kavim, that is, I believe that's 5%. No, it's not. It's 1 out of 40. 1 out of 40 is 2.5%. 1 out of 40 is 2.5%. That's the amount for wheat and for rice. L'sa'ayrin or l'daychen, for barley and millet, tisha kavim l'kur. That's 9 kav out of 180 kav. 9 kav out of 180 kav is 5%. L'kus min l'zera pishtim, for spelt and flaxseed, there the deterioration rate is greater. It's shloi sar in l'kur. It's 3 sar to kur. 3 sar to kur is 10%, right? There's 30 sar in a kur. So 3 sar to kur, the rate is, and we'll see this is a rate per year, right? It's 3 sar per kur, that's 10%. Now, hakol lefi amida, it all goes according to the amount. In other words, this is per kur, v'hakol lefi azman, and the length of time. It's per year. However, Rabbi Yochanan Nuri says, no, if I deposited by mark 10 kur, we don't allow this rate of deterioration for each kur, because this deterioration comes from the mice. The mice eat the same whether there's 1 kur or 30 kur. So I'm Rabbi Yochanan Nuri, what difference does it make to the mice whether there's a lot or a little? They eat a certain amount, bein meharba, bein mekimah, whether there's a lot there or a little. You only deduct and allow this rate of deterioration for the first kur. Comes along Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yehuda says, if there was a big amount, and I deposited to Mark in the dry season, and he returns it to me. I deposited it to him in the winter, and no, the other way around. I deposited to him in the dry season, and he returns it to me in the 1 second. Let me just mute people here. Yeah, so in the event that I deposited it by Marshall in the dry season, and he returns it to me, to Mark in the dry season, and he returns it to me in the rainy season, the swelling of the produce in the rainy season will make up for the depletion of the mice. Therefore, Rabbi Yehuda Aimer im Isa Mida Meruba, if it was a large amount, he doesn't deduct anything. He can't claim any deduction. Why? Mipnei shemaisiris, because anything that would be lost by the mice should have been made up by the swelling and the growing of the produce during the moist season. We'll talk about this more in the Gemara. So the Gemara says that the rate of rice is a very small rate of deterioration, only 2.5%. So the Gemara asks, but oiris tuva chaser, rice deteriorates much more than that. This is talking about peeled rice. Peeled rice doesn't deteriorate so much. Lekusmin pishtim for spelt and flaxseed, shloish sin likur. This is a great amount of deterioration. 3 sa per kur, which is 30 sa, that's 10%. Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Chia, zera pishtin begiv olin shana. When we say it deteriorates this way, this is talking about when the flaxseed is still in their husks. Tanya nami hachi lekusmin zera pishtin begiv dailim for spelt and for flaxseed in the husks, ula irish einoi kolif, and rice that is not peeled, shloisha sa and likur. It's a large deterioration of 3 sa per kur, 10%. Hakolafi amida, tana kain lekol kur v'kur. This is per kur, v'chein lekol shana v'shana, and per year.
Why is peeled rice deteriorate faster? It's in a husk. Why shouldn't
it must be that if it doesn't get peeled after it's detached from the ground, it dries out.
That's not good?
No, if it dries out, it's no good. It starts to spoil. Now, I'm Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Now the Tanya Amru Leila Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, they said to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, it's not just the mice. Harba oivdis man, many spoil. Harba is mispazris man, many get scattered around and lost. Tana, ba'amed devar mamurim. When do we say that Mark could say, look, there's a rate of deterioration, I don't have to return you everything. That's only she'irvam in peirosav. That's only when I deposited by Mark mixed it in with the rest of his peiros. Aval yichad like Karen's obvious, but if Mark put it in a special spot in his garage, so then I'm Eloi Harishal Kalafanecha. Mark says, here it is. I didn't touch it. I covered it. Whatever is here is yours. Says Gemara, V'chi ervan im peirosav mehavi. So what if he mixed it with his peiros? Let him say how much was his peiros, and the rest is mine. Let him see how much was his own, and therefore the rest is mine. Says the Gemara, Mistapik man. It's talking about where he used peiros all the time. Says the Gemara, let him see how much he used so he could deduct that. Says the Gemara, he doesn't know. He didn't keep track of how much he used. The lo yodei kama is tapik. So therefore, I know that I left him a saw. He could deduct whatever it is, either 2.5% or 5% or 10%. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer im Haisa, Rabbi Yehuda says, if it was a large amount, kama mida meruba, what's called a large amount, Amarabba babachana Rabbi Yochanan asara kurin, 10 kur. 10 kur is 300 sa. Tanya nami hachi kama mida meruba asara kurin, 10 kur. Tani kama de Rab Nachman. Where when I gave it to him, I measured it to him from my silo. Now, when I measure it from my silo, I use the big equipment, the big weighing measure of the silo. And he returned it to me from the silo. But if I measured him from the silo, and he returns it to me with a regular household measure, which is smaller than what's used, then he can't deduct any deterioration, because it's going to be a bigger amount because he's using a smaller measure. Says the Gemara, nobody would do that. Nobody would do it with two different measurings. Amalei v'chipa shuftani asking on. Are we talking about fools? The Yove b'kaila rabba, that when I deposit by him, we use a big measuring vessel. V'shaklei b'kaila zuta, and when I get it back, I'm going to get it back with a small measuring vessel. Nobody's going to do that. Says the Gemara, no. Dilma be a Maisa Gairin Kamrit. When it says it's Maisa Gairin, it's talking about the season of the Gairin, which is after the summer, where the produce is dried up. And Bava Metzia Daf, where it was measured in the dry season, and it was returned in the dry season. But if it was measured in the dry season, and Mark returns it to me in the rain season when it swells up, then and then he can't detract because of the mice, because it swells up. Amalei Rapapa Labaya, so Rapapa asked Abaya a Metzia's question. If we pack the grain in the summer in barrels, then why don't the barrels burst in the winter when it swells from the moisture? The barrels should burst. Says the Gemara, you're right. There was an incident where the barrel did burst. It did burst. Another answer is Mishum Itzitza, because of the pressure that they're pressed together very tight in the barrel, they don't swell even during the rain season. Now we're going to go to liquid measures. I hope everybody has their notebook out, that they're taking down the amounts as we welcome in Nathan Langer, who is joining us, and I see Shelley is here. I think he's in a train. In the train, unbelievable. Learning in the train. Ben Cian Cohn is here.
Express, right?
Now, Michal Avram, could I trouble you for some water?
Yeah, we have it.
I have my liquid measure ready right here.
Thank you. Says the Mishnah, Yoitzi loishtus liyayin. Mark could deduct a sixth for wine. Rabbi Yehuda says not a sixth, a fifth. Yoitzi loishloisha lugin shemen lameya. He could deduct 3 lugin of oil for 100. Now, where do you get the 3 lugin? Loga mechza shmarm, a lug and a half for the sediment that settles at the bottom, on luga mechza bala, and a lug and a half that absorbs into the wall of the barrel. Ima yeshem and mezukak, if it was refined oil that doesn't have sediment, then eini yotzei shmar, we can't deduct the sediment. Ima yekankanim yeshanim, if they were old barrels that were already saturated, thank you very much, that were already saturated with absorption, then eini yotzei bela, then you can't deduct the absorption. Rabbi Yehuda says, Afa moicher shemen mezukak lechaveiroi kol yemei sashana, also somebody who sells refined oil to his friend the whole year. Now, here is where I make up to sell Baruch oil. Now, he didn't ask that I should sell him refined oil, and I didn't say I was selling him refined oil. So therefore, if I give him refined oil, so Baruch has to accept a lug and a half to 100, because since I didn't make up that I'm selling him refined oil, that's normal that in 100 there would be a lug and a half of sediment. Now, we said that from wine, let's see, we welcome in over here. We welcome in Itchy. Itchy has arrived. Itchy looks like he's in a log cabin out in the Poconos. Now, Itchy, where are you?
Staten Island.
Are you in Staten Island?
Yeah.
So one says that Mark is allowed to deduct a fifth, and one says Mark is allowed to deduct a sixth. Says the Gemara v'lei pligi, Marki Asrei or Marki Asrei. The Tanakama was talking about it in his locality, and Rabbi Yehuda was talking about it in his locality. But Asrei Damar, in the Tanakama's locality, Chafu Bekira. In Rabbi Yehuda's locality, they coated the barrel with wax. V'loi mayitz tvei, and it didn't absorb a lot, and therefore Mark could only deduct the sixth. But Asrei Damar, Chafu Bekufra, they coated it with pitch, or mayitz tvei, and it absorbed more. Iba is saying, mishum gargishta, or the question was, what kind of clay they used in the barrel. Ha mayitz tvei, in the first locality, it absorbed more, and therefore they deduct the fifth. If it didn't absorb a lot, then they only allow for a sixth. Now the Gemara tells us a story. Ba'asrei de Rabbi Yehuda, Ramu arbam v'tamnei kuzei bedana. They put 48 kuz. Kuz is a measure, a liquid measure. They put 48 kuz in a barrel. Now, ozel dona b'shita zuzeh. The barrel sold for 6 zuz. Right? That's 6 zuz for 48 kuz. Paris Rabbi Yehuda bought the barrel and he broke it up and he sold shita bezuz. He sold 6 kuz for a zuz. So remember, there's 48 kuz in the barrel. He spent on the whole barrel 6 zuz. He bought the barrel for 6 zuz, and then he sold every 6 kuz for a zuz. So that 6 times 6 is 36. So when he sold 36, he got back his investment. Now he has 12 left, because after selling 36, he has 12 left. Dal tlos and veshita, deduct the 36 beshita, pasul like tracer. That leaves him 12. But remember, there's a absorption, right? So dal tamne shtusei, when we deduct 8, which is a sixth of 48, because remember we said that there's going to be an absorption of a sixth. So when you deduct a sixth of 48 is 8. So when you deduct the 8 of the shtus of absorption, so he's left 4. Paslu arba, he's left 4 for his profit. So the Gemara says, if he's only making a profit of 4 out of 48 is a 12th. But you're allowed to make more than a 12th of profit. You're allowed to make a 6th of profit. You shouldn't make more than a 6th of profit. But here, he's only making a 12th of profit. If his profit is 4, he's only making a 12th of profit. Says the Gemara, well, Ika Gulpe, there's the barrel, Ushmaria, and there's the sediment. Says the Gemara, well, if there's the barrel and the sediment, then he's making more than a sixth. Says the Gemara, yeah, but you have to factor in ikatirche, there's his labor, and v'demei barzanaisa, he has to pay a professional to make the hole in the barrel to pour it out properly. So when that's all factored in, he's not making a profit of more than a sixth. Now, in this Masechta, every daf is an adventure. Every daf is an adventure. I didn't notice before, while I was talking, we're up to 31 Zoomers. That's very nice. That's very nice. Now, Ima Yeshem Mizukik, if it was refined oil, Einu Yotzei Shmar. If it was a barrel, such old barrel, then you don't deduct absorption. Says the Gemara, it has to absorb something. It's talking about where it's coated barrels. Even if it's not a coated barrel, if it's an old barrel, caving the time, since its walls are full, it's not going to absorb. Now, Rabbi Yehuda says, even if you sell oil to your friend, I sell, let's say, Shelly oil, he has to accept, since I didn't stipulate that I'm going to give him refined oil, he has to accept a log and a half sediment per 100. Amar Abaye, kishetim salayma ledivrei Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbi Yehuda, muter la'arev shmar. I'm allowed to mix into the wine shmar. The divrei chachamim, according to the chachamim, also la'arev shmar. I'm not allowed to mix into the wine sediment. The divrei Rabbi Yehuda muter la'arev shmarim. I'm allowed to mix into the wine sediment. V'hainu taima de mekabel, and therefore that's why he has to accept a lug and a half. Da'amalei, because I could tell Shelley, ibai la ruvelach. If I wanted to mix it in, milay arvelach, I could have mixed it in. Hashtanami kabel. Now you also have to accept the 1.5 of the sediment. So the Gemara says, let Shelley tell me, if you would have mixed it in, I could have sold it to other people. I could have sold it to other people. But now, what am I going to do with this lug and a half of sediment? It seems to be, the obvious question over here is, so why can't Shelley mix it in? So it seems to be that it can't be mixed in later. Because otherwise, why don't we? What's Shelley's taina? Let him. So Taisus says that since he received it little bits at the time, he can't mix it in. So he says to him, if you mixed it in, I could have sold it together with the oil. But says the Gemara, but Balabaya says here it wouldn't be a taina, because we're talking about a Balabayas. the nichale betzila. He is pleased that it should be clear wine. He's pleased that it should be clear wine. V'lei malei, but why can't the buyer tell him, obviously, since you didn't mix it in, achule achalesli, you waived your right, and therefore you can't give me a lug and a half now. Rabbi Yehuda Tamei says, well, Rabbi Yehuda goes according to his reasoning, the less lay mechila. He doesn't hold that we say that a person waives his right unless he says it directly. The Tanan, this is an interesting halacha. If I sell Mel a yoke, that's the iron bar that's put across the necks of the team of oxen. So if I say I'm selling him a yoke, I'm not selling him the oxen with it. If I sell him the oxen, Rabbi Yehuda says, what do you mean? The money that Mel paid will prove. The money will prove it. Amalai, if Mel says, sell me your yoke for 200 zuz, everybody knows that the bar is not worth 200 zuz. Hadavar yedua she'einat tzemed b'masayim zuz. V'chachamim the chacham say ein adam im raya. Why? Because we say that maybe Mel is giving me a gift. Maybe achule achilte. Maybe he's giving me a gift. He's giving me extra money. But Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold that way. Now, the divrei chachamim, according to chachamim, aser la'arev shmar. It's forbidden to mix the sediment into the wine. V'hainu taima d'loi mekabel, and that's why the Rabbanan argue on Rabbi Yehuda. The Rabbanan say that Shelley does not have to accept the lug and a half of sediment. I have to give him straight 100. The amalei iba is l'ruve. If you wanted to mix it in, would you be allowed to mix it in? Hashtanami loy mekabel. Now I'm not going to accept the lug and a half. It's understood that you're going to give me 100 lug of oil. Amalei Rav Papa L'Abaya. Rav Papa disagrees with the way Abaya looks at this. Adarabba, ipcha mistama. L'divrei chachamim mutal arev shmar. According to the chacham, you're allowed to mix sediment into the oil. V'hainu tamid aloi mekabel, and that's why Shelley doesn't have to accept a loaf of a lug and a half of sediment, because Shelley will say, look, you should have mixed it in. Obviously, since you didn't mix it in, you waived your right. Because as the Gemara says, what am I going to do with a log and a half of sediment? The divrei Rabbi Yehuda also la'arev shmarim. It's forbidden for me to mix into the oil the sediment. Behind the time of the mekabel. And that's why Shelley has to accept it. The amalei, because I tell Shelley, if I wanted to mix it in, I'm not allowed to. Kabule like kabilas, if you're not going to accept it, then what kind of a salesman am I? Zavun v'zabein, I'm going to buy and sell tagari. Great, I'm called a businessman. How could I be stuck with a log and a half of sediment? So that has to be included. Otherwise, I won't be able to make business. Tana, we learned in a brisa, and now we're going to talk about something else: the scum that comes on the top of the oil. So Tana echad alekeach ve'echad hamafkid lipkatim. Both the buyer and me, the depositor, who deposited by Mark, have to accept the scum. So the Gemara is going to say, let's see what this means. My lipkatim. What do you mean? The that a buyer could say, I'm not accepting the scum. So mafkid nami loy mekabel pkatim. So I could tell Mark, I don't want the scum. So Mark says, look, you gave it to me with scum. You have to take it back with scum. Let Mark say, piktech my everlay. It's your scum. You gave it to me with scum. Ella, rather, kiechi the mafkid mekabel pkatim. Just like the depositor has to accept the scum, Mark has to accept the scum. The buyer also has to accept the scum. Says Gemara, "Mi mekabel lekech pkatim." Does the buyer have to accept the scum? Vatani Rabbi Yehuda Aimer lo amru shemen acher el l'meicher bulvad. We only say that the oil, if it's murky, if it's cloudy, it's only the burden is only on the seller. Shari lekech mekabel of lug mechza shmarim, because the lekech already accepts upon himself a lug and a half of sediment. He doesn't have to accept the scum too. Says the Gemara, Shari lekech mekabel of lug mechza shmarim b'lei pkatim. Says the Gemara, lekasha hadi yav leizuze b'tishrei. This is talking about where Shelley gives me zuz in the month of Tishrei. That's right after the oil is harvested, and the oil then is full of scum and is not expensive, because Shakal B'Nisan, and he takes deliberately in Nisan kimida de Tishrei, according to the price in Tishrei. So therefore, since he's paying the price in Tishrei, so then Shelley has to accept the scum. But if he's paying me the money of the more expensive rate in Nisan, where the oil is pure, and he's taking it in Nisan, then I have to give him oil without scum, because he's paying the price of oil without scum. Okay, Rabbi, so we're going to stop over here now. We're going to take up the new Mishnah from Chicago, Be'ezus Hashem, tomorrow night, as we will have shir tomorrow night, an hour later, one time, shir hour later tomorrow night at 9 o'clock. We will be broadcasting from Marshall's house as my wife goes to her best friend's wedding. We're going to the Smilowitz Chasana in Chicago. And we'll be back on Wednesday, Be'ezus Hashem, for the daf at 8, and a Haggadah shir all about the mitzvah of matzah. Hopefully it will be prepared by then. And now we're going to learn the Mishnah Yomis.